Hi, our presentation is on professional athletes, and my group members are.
I'm Barbara.
I'm Tia.
I'm Danny.
And
I'm
I'm
Kylie.
Lauren. And I'm Lauren.
These are our table of contents. And my first section is overview of the population. We're going to be discussing professional athletes today. A definition of them is that they are individuals who earn their living by participating in organized sports competitions and events. Some demographics of the group can be age, also can be like ethnicity and nationality, which it varies. There's also a huge income disparity among a lot of demographics who are professional athletes, and there is a large group of them because they can change over time with retirements and new talent emerging and expansions of contracts, and their professional athletes are seen all around the world.
All right, so I'm Danny. I'll be talking about the vulnerability of the professional athletes. All right, so there are a few factors that make athletes more vulnerable than the average person. The first of the few is physical vulnerability. Since professional athletes are indeed always on the move, they are far more susceptible to injuries and getting hurt. This potential for ongoing injuries can and most likely does lead to long-term health issues. All right, the next is mental health vulnerability. This revolves around the fact that athletes essentially perform for an enormous audience continually. They face an amount of pressure that an ordinary human most likely does not have the ability to overcome. This can, of course, lead to issues like severe anxiety and depression when they find bad days in performance. All right, as for financial vulnerability, athletes do have a far more shortened career. If you'd like to call it a career, meaning that once their time as a professional athlete is up, they are left in the dust to try and figure out what they want to do with the rest of their lives, in a sense. All right, and then moving on to social vulnerability, there are various forms of intense training and competitions that take a huge amount of time from their lives, which could, of course, just simply lead to negative or negatively impact their personal relationships.
Okay, and next I'm going to talk about some health-related issues. So first, I'm going to talk about some social determinants of health. So while professional athletes may not face the same social determinants of health as the general population, there are still factors that can influence their health and well-being. So here are some of them I'm going to talk about. First, race and ethnicity. Professional athletes may face health disparities based on their race and ethnicity. Discrimination and systemic inequalities can lead to disparities in access to resources, opportunities, and healthcare. Next, socioeconomic status. While professional athletes often enjoy significant financial success, the level of income can vary widely. Next, access to healthcare is crucial for professional athletes, as injuries are a common part of their career. Athletes with better access to healthcare services, such as team doctors and sports medicine specialists, can receive more timely and effective care, aiding in injury management and prevention. And this can have a direct impact on their ability to compete at a high level. Then we've got educational attainment. Education can influence an athlete's health literacy and their ability to make informed decisions about their health and well-being. Social support networks play a vital role in the mental and emotional health of professional athletes. Athletes who have a strong support system, including coaches, teammates, and family, may better be equipped to cope with stress, pressure, and the mental challenges of their profession. And then lastly, the access to healthy living conditions. These living conditions of professional athletes can impact their access to healthy food, adequate rest, and recovery facilities. Proper nutrition, rest, and recovery are critical for their physical health and performance. So in summary, the social determinants of health in the context of professional athletes are similar to those in the general population, but with some unique considerations, and addressing these is essential to ensure that athletes can perform at their best and maintain their long-term health and well-being. So next, I'm going to talk about some health problems professional athletes face. While often they're admired for their physical abilities, they can face various health challenges due to the demands of their rigorous training and competition schedules. It's important to note that specific health problems can vary depending on the sport, individual factors, and other variables. And some examples I have of general health issues are injuries, mental health issues, overtraining syndrome, cardiovascular issues, and substance abuse. And so last, I'm going to talk about the key contributors to health problems for professional athletes. So first, we got injury and overuse. The nature of intense training, high impact sports, and the pressure to perform can contribute to both acute injuries and overuse injuries. Second, concussions and traumatic brain injuries. Contact sports carry a risk of head injuries, and repeated concussions can have a long-term health consequences on a professional athlete. Third, mental health challenges. The pressure to succeed, media scrutiny, and the highly competitive nature of professional sports can contribute to many mental health issues. Fourth, I have performance enhancing substances. The desire to achieve peak performance may lead some athletes to use banned substances, posing health risks. Fifth, I have high physical demand. The extreme physical demands of professional sports can lead to chronic fatigue, that overtraining syndrome, and cardiovascular issues. And lastly, lack of rest and recovery. Busy schedules and the expectations to continually perform at a high level may lead to inadequate rest and recovery.
Okay, now I'm going to talk about health service needs and realities. Professional athletes have access to a wide range of specialized healthcare services to support their physical well-being and performance. Physical therapists play a crucial role in rehabilitation and injury prevention, helping athletes recover and maintain peak physical condition. Nutritionists and dietitians develop customized dietary plans to optimize athletes' energy levels and recovery. Strength and conditioning coaches create personalized fitness regimens to enhance strength, speed, and endurance. Athletic trainers provide on-field support, such as taping and first aid during games and practices. And additionally, mental health professionals offer counseling and support to manage the psychological aspects of competition, including stress, anxiety, and motivation. These comprehensive healthcare services enable professional athletes to perform at their best and recover from injuries more efficiently. Athletes can receive care from places like the HSS Center for Professional Sports Medicine that brings together leading experts in orthopedics, sports medicine, and related specialties, provide excellent care in a highly collaborative manner. Barriers. Some of the barriers that exist are mainly non-physical psychological barriers. And the harms that these barriers can cause are misdiagnosis and mistreatment of injuries or illnesses, which may lead in prolonged recovery periods or even career-ending consequences. In some cases, over-medication or the improper administration of pain management can lead to a dependency on medications or substance abuse issues. The pressure to return to play may also influence healthcare providers to prioritize short-term performance over the long-term health of athletes, potentially like exacerbating these injuries or compromising the overall well-being. There is a risk of privacy breaches, which is also a barrier, as athletes' medical records and conditions may become public, leading to emotional distress and harm to their personal lives. And additionally, a lack of attention to mental health concerns or the mishandling of psychological issues can contribute to long-term mental health challenges, including anxiety, depression, and sometimes often suicide. So some ways that we can demonstrate sensitivity is that we should prioritize open and empathetic communication, actively listening to athletes' concerns and respecting their unique experiences and challenges. This includes acknowledging the physical and mental demands for their professions. Healthcare providers should also maintain strict confidentiality and privacy standards, ensuring that athletes, their medical information remains secure, and addressing their concerns about public exposure. We should also be providing culturally competent care, considering the different diverse backgrounds and nationalities of professional athletes. Being aware of cultural sensitivities and language barriers can help us build trust and ensure athletes receive the most effective care. And a commitment to long-term and the long-term health and well-being of athletes rather than just short-term is really important. This includes encouraging preventative measures and mental health support even beyond their competitive careers. In essence, demonstrating sensitivity involves holistic care that respects individuality of athletes and prioritizes their overall health and success, both in sports and in life.
In talking about the financial issues that pro athletes face, it's really important to talk about the sudden wealth syndrome, and that refers to basically a psychological and emotional challenges that individuals may face when they experience a rapid increase in financial status. This syndrome is really oftentimes associated with pro athletes as they earn substantial incomes in a very short period of time, as they sign very multi-million-dollar contracts or secure significant endorsement deals. That, of course, brings abrupt lifestyle changes where, with this sudden increase in wealth, they might feel tempted to indulge in expensive purchases, luxurious accommodations, and extravagant lifestyles without the proper financial planning. In addition, this age group of these new athletes are usually like early 20s, meaning that they typically lack the financial literacy to manage their new income, and they wind up in trusting risky advisors that harm them more than help. Lastly, they also feel the need to send money to their families, as more than half of NFL players, for example, come from families and countries that are well below the national poverty level. So they might feel the need to send their parents or family and friends back home, cars, houses, or help them get out of debt.
Okay, so moving on to ethical principles. Professional athletes are in the limelight enough as it is, so it's important that their privacy is respected, and healthcare workers can do so by following HIPAA's privacy rule. This ensures that the patient's information is confidential and only shared with other healthcare professionals involved in the care plan and treatment of the patient. There should also be a clear line of what information about the patient's medical care can be shared and disclosed with important parties, such as coaches, stakeholders, and they're also that will be impacted by the patient's care. For autonomy, the decision should ultimately be left up to the patient. However, it should be understood that there may be outside influences like team culture affecting the patient's decision-making process, which includes pressure from coaches, teammates, and fans to get back to the sport as soon as possible. Therefore, it may be beneficial to speak to the patient alone or with family to try to mitigate these influences and make sure that the patient's best interest is being put first. In addition, accurate and concise information should be given so the patient can make a well-informed decision about their care, which may include the type of procedure, recovery time, and overall how their performance may be affected. Moving on, all patients should be treated fairly regardless of fame, status, rank, and have equal access to adequate healthcare. In addition, medical personnel should check any biases and stereotypes that they may have about professional athletes regarding gender, race, age, etc., whether it is implicit or explicit. It's important that these biases are checked and broken so that all patients are able to receive proper and equal care to ensure justice. Moving on to beneficence, the responsibility of the healthcare professional is to do good and select a plan of action that is best for the patient. So this includes offering care that will treat the cause of the clinical issue rather than just the symptoms expressed like a quick fix to get the patient back to playing their sport quicker. For veracity, healthcare professionals need to tell the whole truth regarding the care and treatment the patient receives and the severity of their case. They cannot withhold information due to conflicts of interest with managers, other teammates, and stakeholders.
Okay, next I'm going to be talking about some legal issues. So first, I'm going to talk about some laws protecting professional athletes. First, we have the collective bargaining agreements. Professional sports leagues often have CBAs negotiated between the players' unions and the league management. These agreements outline the terms and conditions of employment, including salary caps, working conditions, benefits, and dispute resolution process. Next, we got labor laws. Athletes, like other workers, are protected by general labor laws. These laws may include provisions related to minimum wage, working hours, and overtime pay. However, some professional athletes, particularly in major sports leagues, negotiate contracts that may deviate from standard labor laws. Next, we have anti-discrimination laws. Federal and state anti-discrimination laws protect athletes from discrimination based on race, color, national origin, sex, religion, disability, or age. Then we got health and safety regulations. There are regulations in place to ensure the health and safety of athletes during training and competition. These may include protocols for preventing and managing injuries, as well as guidelines for proper medical care. Then we have agent regulations. Athletes often work with sports agents to negotiate contracts and endorsements. Many jurisdictions have regulations and licensing requirements for sports agents to protect athletes from exploitation and to ensure fair representation. Last, for laws protecting, we have player associations. Professional athletes often form player associations or unions that advocate for their interests. Now I'm going to talk about some laws against. First, not non-guaranteed contracts. In many professional sports, contracts are not guaranteed, meaning that the teams can terminate an athlete's contract before it reaches its conclusion. This lack of job security can be stressful for athletes, especially in physically demanding sports where injuries are common. Then we have salary caps and restrictions. Leagues often impose salary caps to maintain competitive balance among teams. While the intent is to prevent large market teams from having a financial advantage, salary caps can limit the earning potential of top athletes and may be perceived as restrictive. Then we have restrictions on free agency. Some leagues have rules that restrict the ability of athletes to become free agents and negotiate with other teams. Then we have short careers and post-retirement challenge. Professional athletes often have relatively short careers, and transitioning to post-athletic life can be challenging. Then lack of privacy. High-profile athletes may face a lack of privacy due to media attention, public scrutiny. This can impact their personal lives and mental well-being. Lastly, I have exploitation of young athletes. There have been concerns about the exploitation of young athletes, particularly in sports where players are recruited at a young age. And in my opinion, there are several areas of legislative reform that could benefit professional athletes, and these reforms may vary depending on the specific needs and concerns of the athletes in different sports and regions. The areas that I believe are most important and deserve attention are health and safety laws, including concussion protocols and mental health support.
So a few questions to consider when revolving around social issues are, what stereotypes affect this group? Professional athletes face the stereotype of being entitled and arrogant people, which is caused by the high amount of money and fame that is usually brought with being a well-known athlete. Another stereotype they face is having a lack of intelligence. With everyone focusing on their physical ability to perform, it usually gets pretty easy to ignore other aspects of them as a person, such as their intelligence. All right, another question to consider is what stigmas there are against the group is that athletes tend to face mental health stigmas by not wanting to seek mental help, since they see it as showing a sign of weakness, which they would of course think that they cannot do while being a professional athlete. Another is the performance enhancing drug stigma, which revolves around athletes being accused of using drugs in order to help them perform better, which ultimately leads to their reputation and career being highly at risk. All right, and then just an additional social issue faced by this group consists of the challenge of maintaining stable and healthy relationships. Like I said earlier, athletes are required to obey strict and rigorous schedules, which simply holds them back from keeping good relationships with friends, partners, and even family at some points. This can unfortunately lead to the stigma that professional athletes, usually male athletes, mistreating their loved ones.
Okay, so some considerations for nurses. People in this profession should demonstrate cultural competence and awareness for the patient and their sport by asking questions, not assuming, respecting their beliefs, and being in an active state of learning. Nurses should educate the patient when necessary on topics such as how to prevent future injuries in training and games, stretch routines they can perform for recovery, and how to properly care for whatever they're being treated for. In addition, the patient is more than the number that they wear on their jersey. Injuries are upsetting for anyone experiencing them, especially if it could cost you your career. So just making sure that you empathize with the patient and meet not just their physical needs, but also their emotional and physiological needs is very important. And some possible ethical dilemmas that a nurse may encounter when working with professional athletes include treating the patient for what is best for them versus their sport and or team. Not only do athletes feel the pressure, but nurses may also feel this outside pressure to expedite recovery time for players, which raises the ethical concern of putting the sport above the athlete's health. Lastly, conflicting with the wishes of stakeholders, especially if the nurse is employed under them, could affect decision-making by the nurse due to possible financial concerns and power imbalances.
So for our case study, we chose to do a real-life example of Delonte Maurice West. For those who don't know who he is a former NBA star that was the 24th overall pick in the 2004 NBA draft. He was drafted by the Boston Celtics. He was a very, very notable shooting guard as he played for several teams, including the Celtics, Supersonics, Cavaliers, and the Mavericks. His fall from grace really started in 2008, where he admitted to having constant drug misuse and was also diagnosed with bipolar disorder. The star was also arrested multiple times, starting early in 2009, where he was first arrested for transporting numerous amount of weapons that were guns in his vehicle. He also had many accounts of public intoxication, where he was seen arguing with other people and strangers. He had a misdemeanor charge where he attempted to break into a stranger's car with them inside of it. And at his last season, he was at the Dallas Mavericks from 2011 to 2012, but he was suspended indefinitely at age 28 for being too hard to work with and including all these arrestments and misdemeanor charges. So the main challenges facing Delonte West was starting with his bipolar disorder. He got arrested multiple times again and had many charges against him. But after he left the NBA, he was spotted multiple times panhandling in like Dallas and Missouri. In 2016, he was spotted walking around a parking lot barefooted in a hospital gown, begging for money. There has also been multiple TikToks of Delonte West showing him dancing on a street or just being homeless. And this really took the topic of homelessness in the NBA, where he got enough media attention that Mark Cuban, who is the owner of the Dallas Mavericks, the last team that West played for, found West and took him to rehab. So this video to the right is actually the TikToks that went viral at this time.
I do not believe in recording people when they're at their lowest, but Delonte West is at my 7-Eleven.
I see it. That's dancing in front of 7-Eleven. They don't know I just got a Tostito and a Slurpee. I'm like, yeah.
I have a YouTube. I'm gonna put you on my YouTube. Thank you, Mr. West. God bless you, man.
All right, young fellas, keep God first. And with that, all things are constant.
Amen. I do not believe in people when they're.
So those TikToks basically showed him and his mental health well-being not being so good right now. In his case study, the key stakeholders, of course, is for one, Delonte Maurice West. He's the primary stakeholder, as his struggles with drug misuse and his bipolar disorder has impacted his life and forcing him to become homeless. Mark Cuban is another stakeholder, as again, once the TikToks were spread about Delonte West, that Mark Cuban was able to find him and pick him up to take him to rehab, where he is actually still currently doing better. He did leave rehab. However, he's still being better and working to actually go into the Big Three league. In addition, the NBA organization is another stakeholder, as the demands possible on the pro athlete, like the mental health well-being and the financial demands highlighted upon the situation of West, possibly initiated more discussions of what happens in this organization and how they can deal with stars similar to Delonte West. And lastly, the media is a very important key stakeholder in this case study, as these posted TikToks help shed light on West's condition and how an individual that has a completely different life story can be different from their final. So again, the story of Delonte West really reflects the challenges that individuals, even those with very successful careers, even promising careers, can deal with when faced with mental health issues and personal struggles. It really underscores the importance of us understanding and addressing mental health concerns with the context of pro sports and society at large. So for some discussion questions, more so food for thought is, should the media showing Delonte Maurice West being homeless be considered a positive, as it did shed light on the situation? And another question to leave with you is it ethical to record an individual without their consent, even though this could also be seen as a positive in his case? And then lastly, the next slides just show us our references, and that is our presentation. Thank you.